Macroom, like hundreds of other towns, began as a primitive settlement on the banks of a river, in this case the Sullane. Evidence of the human activity in the area survives from prehistory. Macroom seems to have been a base for the Druids of Munster.
A major battle took place at Bailick near Macroom in 978 AD. Brian Boru's brother Mahan was killed by a Danish chieftain named Malloy. A year later, Brian Boru engaged Malloy in a battle of Macroom at a point where the Lee and Sullane meet. The battle lasted all day and there were hundreds of casualties.
Malloy was slain by Moreau, Brian's son, and Brian was declared King of Munster. This was the first major battle between the Irish and the Danes.
Bishop McGeegan was born in Duhallow in northwest County Cork and educated in France and Spain. He was an enthusiastic supporter of the Confederation of Kilkenny, which controlled most of Ireland between the 1641 uprising and the Cromwellian conquest of 1649. McGeegan accompanied the Confederation forces on many campaigns and was present at the Confederation victories at the Battle of Benburb in 1646.
McGeegan became very active in rallying the Confederation forces, who were intending to relieve the siege of Clonmel. They were, however, intercepted near Macroom by the seasoned cavalry of Lord Bohilland put to flight. McGeegan himself was captured and taken the following day to the walls of Carrigadrohid Castle, which was occupied by Confederation forces and told to call on them to surrender. He chose instead to exhort them to hold on, and as a result was hanged from a nearby tree. The garrison surrendered shortly afterwards. McGeegan's body was later buried in the local churchyard at Hena. Art O'Lara of Raleigh Macroom, like many of the Irish gentry of the time, had been abroad. He was an officer in the Hungarian service. He married Eileen of the Raven Hair, the daughter of O'Connell of Derrynane, after they had fallen in love in 1767. The immediate cause of the tragedy was the winning of a race by Art O'Lara's mare. At the time, Irish Catholics were not permitted to own a horse that was worth more than £5. The English planter, whose horse had been beaten, offered O'Lara £5 for this. He refused the offer. He was declared an outlaw and was afterwards shot through the heart. The first intimation that his wife received of the tragedy was the arrival of the mare without her rider. The poem is one of the greatest laments ever written and one of the greatest love poems in the Irish language. Eileen composed it on the subject of the death of Art on the 4th of May, 1773. It details his murder at Carriganimma, County Cork, of Art at the hands of British official Abraham Morris.
The Queena is divided into 5 parts, composed in the main over the dead body of her husband at the time of the wake, and later when Art was reinterred in Kilcray.
Magra go dangan tú,
lá de vacahu,
I gceann tíon varigig,
hug mahul aragat,
hug ma chrí tanmh dut,
daily some hard lat,
I vado vala lat,
is Thompson narv ahrach,
chus parlusa galagam,
rumina a macharam,
bakusa yargada.
One square tower, a few walls, and an arched gateway are all that remain of Macroom Castle. It was built in the 13th century. Later, it became the property in 1656 to Admiral Sir William Penn, Father William Penn, founder of Pennsylvania.
Macroom Castle was burned out on 5 separate occasions. The last occasion was on 18th August 1922, following the evacuation of British auxiliaries from the town. Members of anti-treaty forces retreated from Cork City to Macroom, burning the castle before leaving.
Macroom was the main base in Cork for the British Auxiliary Division during the War of Independence. The Irish Republican Army was highly active in the county, especially in the areas around Macroom, Bandon and Dunmanway. Royal Irish Constabulary Police in the town described the area as practically in a state of war.
In 1920 at Kilmichael, on the road between Macroom and Dunmanway. 17 members of the Macroom Auxiliary Sea Company were ambushed and killed by a local IRA cell led by the prominent General Tom Barry. In the aftermath of the attack, the British military were given the power to execute anyone found carrying arms and ammunition,
to search houses, impose curfews, try suspects in military rather than civilian courts, and to intern suspects without trial.
On the 11th of December, in reprisal, the centre of Cork City was burnt by auxiliaries, British soldiers and Black Antans.
Mount Massey, now ruined, was the 18th and 19th century home of the members of the Massey family, and is located north by Kilnagerteen and gave the townland of Massey Town its name.
Later their house was sieged and eventually burned in December 1920 during the War of Independence. How I longed for to roam down by Mounties green groves, or to poach by the light of the moon. That spot of my birth, there is no place on earth like Mount Massey, the flower of Macroom.
Well, the museum originated just up the road, 200 or 300 yards, and back in the early 1960s, a collection by a guy called Park Sheehan. 12 years ago, the old building had deteriorated significantly. It was very damp. The roof was inadequate. It was entirely too small. So we looked at getting a new building. So it was actually opened in August 16 by the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins. It's a self-guiding museum. There are information panels on the side of each exhibit. We have the wheel that was on the Crossley tender that was driven by the auxiliaries in 1920 in the Kilmichael ambush. As we all know, it was a very successful ambush from the volunteers' point of view, with most of the participants being killed, the auxiliaries. And when that was done, then the Crossley tenders, which in actual fact were the military transport of the time for the military, was burned out. And this is one of the remaining wheels here we have that came from that. We also have quite a lot relating to Mayor of Cork, Terence McSweeney, who died in hunger strike in 1920. We'll be having a big 100-year commemoration next year to record that significant event. Michael Collins was shot within about 2 miles of Bain-le-Blas, where I was born myself, and on that day, August the 22nd, 1922, he and his convoy set out from Macroom. They came to Kilmurray by circuitous routes. They did actually pass the front of this building on their way to Bain-le-Blas. One of the guys at the top of the hill had a collection of, I don't know, was it ducks or chickens, and they ran across the road in front of the convoy, and the convoy had to be stopped to let the poultry get through. They were ambushed on the way back that evening, and Michael Collins was shot. And I suppose that was one of the most iconic events really in the War of Independence, and something that most people will relate to.
Macroom is on the river that flows into the Lee, just outside the Gera. And I guess a lot of the culture of the area, things would come from the Gera, like old stories and things like that about the people who lived there long ago and things that happened.
I suppose the Gera is best explained by its name, really, in Irish, which is Anghira, which basically means a wooded river, or a wood in a river, which may sound a bit strange, but I suppose it's when you actually look at the structure and you see all the islands, you can see how the River Lee broke up into a whole lot of channels and islands, and of course the forests grew on that. We can date it back to the end of the last ice age, when all of Ireland and all of Europe would have been covered in temperate rainforest. So technically speaking, the Gera is the very last piece of it left in the whole of Western Europe, of what we call a primeval river forest. So quite unique.
Well, as I said, it was cut down in the 50s in order to make a reservoir for Carrigadroha Dam on the River Lee.
People still lived inside in that forest and were completely, almost self-sufficient, and they had some incredible customs. So the Gera forest covered about 3,000 acres, and it was a gigantic maze. And when you went into the forest, the only way you could travel safely was through the channels by boat. But if you didn't know it, you kept going around in circles and you couldn't get out of the maze. And that was known in Gaelic again, very old Irish term called Meshcán Meori, which means, in a very simple way, a confused idiot.
And there's lots of old stories about people who lived in there making poteen and being bandits and things like that. So
one of the more famous characters that hid in the forest was during the penal times in the mid-1700s, called Sean Rua, or Nguira. Rua coming from red hair. So he was a red-haired man, and Nguira, Sean Rua Nguira, or red-haired Sean of the Guerra as he was known. And he was a sort of an early day type of Robin Hood character. He had a famous match in the square in Macroom. Sean was challenged to a duel, and if he won the duel, he'd get his freedom. The contest was quite simply they put a coin up on the wall of the castle arch, and they stood by the town hall, which was a much older building then, and each had 6 shots, and whoever hit the coin the most times would be the winner. But Sean Rowe was brilliant, and the English army officer was brilliant, and they both hit it 6 times, so it was a tie. So then Sean Rowe pulled out his dagger, and he held up the dagger and he said, put it up against the wall of the castle with the knife facing outwards, and we're allowed 1 shot each, and whoever splits his bullet on the edge of the knife into the 2 most equal parts is the winner. So the English guy took aim first, and the bullet lodged right in beside the blade, and no one thought that Sean would even beat that, but Sean had a brilliant eye, took aim and hit the knife straight on and split the bullet in 2 perfect equal halves, and he won the contest. And of course there was such a crowd in the square of Macroom at the time, the screaming and the roaring of rejoice and victory for Sean could be heard over here. And of course Sean Rule got his freedom and was never interfered with after that. So he was one of the more famous characters. And then of course the other famous characters in the Guerra were the people who used to make the poteen and the illegal whiskey, which they used to use to get some money. And of course, like when the police had come out and they'd be up in the hill in the army, they'd be looking down in the forest, they could see all the smoke coming out. And then when they'd go into the forest, they'd get totally lost inside and they could never find the stills. And they would get so confused and lost inside they couldn't get out. But of course the local people would avoid them and leave them inside there all night in the dark, and they might go in and rescue them in the morning, and of course the officers would be so terrified they'd never come back. So right up to the 1950s when the dam was built, they were making the poteen happily out and no one could catch them. Unfortunately, most of their history went with them, and I did. When my mother grew up inside in the Guerra, she was born inside in the forest. So that's why I would have some of the stories.
And my grandparents lived there, right in the middle of it, and my mum was born there. And so she remembered what it was like before it was cut down. So it must have been very traumatizing for her to see it all cut down. But so it's a place that I've always visited over the. Well, I won't tell you how old I am, but since I was a kid, I've always visited it constantly. So it means a lot to me, yeah, as an artist, because I am an artist. So it means a load to me, really, yeah.
In 1985, a number of people in Macroom, Blow-In and native people, we got together and we founded the Macroom Environmental District Group, primarily with the aim of getting some protection on the Guerra's 800-acre residual old swamp woodland, and we succeeded. So what I have been doing since the early 80s is going into the Guerra, the real forest, and collecting acorns and hazelnuts and crab apples and wild cherry and bird cherry and blackthorn and hawthorn, and trying to grow from the most pure of the genetic source on this island, indeed in Western Europe. So this is a big fish bin, and inside the fish bin There are a number of fish boxes, mainly of hazel, but I also am growing a lot of walnut. I've always grown walnut. It's a very important tree. It will come as climate changes. And Spanish chestnut from the castle grounds, the medieval grounds of the McCarthys. There's huge Spanish chestnuts there, probably from the early 1700s. A lot of the material that I've grown would be, for example, the bird cherry. It's a United Nations officially endangered tree. The Guare is one of the last places it's growing, so I've been collecting seeds for 30 years and growing loads of these and putting them into schools, church grounds, in Shigila church grounds, full of bird cherry, Prunus padus. This is a classic Guare oak. This would be near enough a 30-year-old oak. It would be sessile oak. There'd be 3 types of oak in the Guare. So this would be one of the sessile oaks. The ash is from the Guare. The alder and the wild crab apples are all Guare stock. So there's near enough 3 acre of pure genetic material. I'm a heritage specialist with the primary schools since '87. So the local schools collect all their milk cartons, and the schools also help me make compost, and I make a bit of compost here. And we grow these on, and then we plant them back in the schools and in the local church grounds. I know the Bishop of Cork, Paul Colton, he wants a big yew tree planted next November, so it will be yew from this valley in the cathedral grounds. My thinking here is that with my vulnerable adults and my special needs groups that come and visit, this has become a sort of a workshop that we pot on each year, and then we make sure they go to good homes within the valley. Genetic material has a reach of about 10 miles. Beyond 10 miles, different genetic material occurs, generally in the Northern Hemisphere. So these won't go beyond 10 miles from the Guare.
My name is Geraldine O'Grady. I was the 1999 Rose of Tralee, and I'm from Macroom originally. It was great representing Macroom in the Rose of Tralee, and it was kind of extra special because it was the first time that we'd ever sent an entrant to Tralee in order to bring something of Macroom to the Rose of Tralee. For one of the events, I wore a hooded cloak, and as you know, Macroom, the hooded cloak is very special to us. So I had one especially made by a fantastic dressmaker called Ernest Perryman. It was this gorgeous velvet cloak, and I wore that for the parade down in Tralee, which was one of the highlights of the week. When you're in Tralee, it's a little bit of a bubble. You don't really know what to expect. You can't really imagine that everybody is watching it. So when I kind of came back to Macroom for the homecoming, I thought, oh God, this is a bit embarrassing. They have a big open top bus, and geez, you know, is that not a little bit embarrassing, and will anybody come out to see me? And so we went all the way downtown, and the moment that we just turned at the square and saw 5,000 people there in the street, that was really one of my all-time favourite moments, not just of the year but of my life, because I looked around that sea of faces and there was a lot of people I'd gone to school with, people I'd grown up with, people that I'd known who were there supporting me, and it was a really, really profound feeling. So that for me is one of my favourite memories of Macroom, and also one of my favourite memories ever.
So Rena is my name. I come from Berings. I suppose I'm a physio by trade, so I work in private practice. So I've been working here in Macroom on my own with the last 4 years, and I was here for 2 years before that. So in total, I'm working in Macroom for 6 years. I suppose the other thing about myself that I suppose most people around here know is that I play sport. So I would have played with the Cork Camogie and ladies football team for a long number of years. With the Cork ladies football, I suppose the first time we ever won All Ireland was 2005. It was the first year I suppose I got to play in All Ireland final in Crow Park and win. So we'd won the Camogie final 2 weeks previously, but kind of celebrations were a bit put on hold when you were playing football. So when we won the football in 2005, it was just a big release, and it was the first time that Cork ladies football had ever won All Ireland. So it was a huge achievement to be part of that team, and it was very, very special. Then I suppose in terms of with the Cork Camogie team, I captained the team to winning in All-Ireland in 2017, so I suppose, look, as you get a bit older, you have to put in a bigger kind of effort to be at everything. So I suppose there was a lot of work went in that year to preparing to get to a final, and I suppose as captain there was a few extra bits and pieces to do as well, so I was thrilled when we got over the line. I think Macroom is a hugely sporting town, and I really think there was huge support from the town here when I was involved in Cork, definitely. So before I worked here, I suppose I was working in Ballincollig, and there was a period that I was working both in Macroom and in Ballincollig, so I suppose there was always a direct comparison between the two places. And kind of the conclusion we came to was, in terms of physio, there's no real difference really, except we used to always say you'd nearly have to put in an extra 10 minutes at the end of the Macroom appointment for the chat at the end.
The history of the business. Well, I suppose antiques are history. That's all history. Been in this business all my life. It's the ultimate recycling as well. Which is very important. And we've bits and pieces from all over the world, different eras. Macroom's a great town. It's a great trading town. People are interested in antiques. It kind of went off the boil for a while and kind of got very quiet. And younger people. It's great to see younger people are actually starting to get interested as well. This place, you're in a historical building. It's part of the old castle, the old castle lodge, going back to about 1750, and it kind of suits what we do here. The castle's been here since the 1200s, the old castle, and then the new castle, as they call it, was built in 1750. And the last owners were Lord and Lady Ardenon, and he was Guinness. He was Arthur Guinness of the Guinness fame, and she was the daughter of the Earl of Ventry. So what you see is the entrance, is the main entrance. The cannons out there, which were originally outside the house, outside the old castle. Yeah, so it's good to see these places restored and being used. Once they're gone forever.
When my mother came here first, she was here before she got married, about 2 years before she got married, so it's almost 90 years that the shop is here. Of course, you have had the supermarkets, and I suppose small shops are just holding on, doing business. Small shops are important as well, because we discuss a lot of problems as well, that you might have heard people come in, ask you questions about the information that they may need to know, and I suppose small shops is handy that way. And there's a lot of history attached to the house actually. In the 1922, during the war, the Free State Army were here in this house, and one of them got shot. The bullet ricocheted back and killed the soldier outside. There's a little dent where the bullet ricocheted back on the soldier outside.
My name is Katrina, and the name of the shop is Enchanted Flowers. We make wedding flowers, bouquets, we see everything from newborn babies to people passing away. We're here for everything. Weddings, anniversaries, christenings, anything at all that can do with flowers, we manage it. History of the shop. I had my last son, and I was in hospital with him. He was in the NICU. I received a bunch of flowers. Don't know to this day who sent me the flowers, but I was looking at them for a couple of days and I went, I could do that. And he was 6 weeks. I went off and I did all my courses in Dublin, came home, and on the 9th of July 2010 I opened the shop. And we were 5 years in our old premises up the street. We're here 4 years and still growing, still going. There is a lot of help from some of the other business people in town. If you ask the question, they're more than happy to give you a bit of advice and and the customers are great, because they'll kind of say, oh, I don't like that, or I had another colour on the front of the shop and then I painted it pink and what it is now. I had it green and then I changed it to pink, and they were all like, geez, I much prefer the pink. So they will come in and tell you what they like and don't like in Macroom. Even in the 9 years, there's a few businesses that started, we'd say, after me, have closed since. Some new businesses have come into the town that I said to myself, gee, I said, no, well, they lost it all, but they're thriving. hopefully now with the bypass starting, which it is, that'll make a huge difference, you know. So traffic has gotten off here in the town, but footfall has come up as well in the town, especially since you have more parking now with Lidls and them around the corner. This place has gone through the mill, the building we're in now. This was originally, years ago, was the original Fitzgerald's family business. And it started off as, the front of it used to be the hardware shop, and the section we're in now used to be the funeral directors. Used to be the funeral home. And then Martin, that owns the building now, his father bought next door and turned it into the Hooded Cloak, and then it kind of expanded. So it's now Fitzy's Corner, they own the whole thing. And then the funeral directors moved back, and this became a sweet shop and the video den. And now the funeral director has gone, the actual funeral home has gone way down over there, but the family used to still live up over here. It's interesting to be here. Mrs. Fitzgerald passed away in this building, and the odd night I'd be standing over there and you'd see her above there. But I take no notice of that, that's just my personal thing. But yeah, so the building itself has changed an awful lot, but the actual original windows that are in the front of the building are the original windows, only that I've painted them pink. They were black for 60 years before I painted them pink. But they're the original windows.
Our business this September will be here 150 years. It's my great-great-grandfather that started. He married into the bakery business in 1869, and it has been carried on. I'm the fourth generation of bakers in the business, so my son and daughter now are the fifth generation. So it's been there quite a while, and thanks to God we didn't allow it to get too big, because it would go over control, and maybe we're just happy to keep it at the level that we're at. And there has been a lot of changes, I suppose. The traffic is one of them, and I think we could do with a bypass very badly, because the town is gridlocked, and normally if places get gridlocked like that, people haven't time to stop because they're delayed anyway in traffic, and they're better off to be there on time and be able to have a break and not be delayed so that they have to keep going. So I'm very much in favour of the bypass. You know, I think the castle was a great addition there, and I mean it was 13th century, and William Penn spent his boyhood there, and you know, it was burnt in 1922, and I suppose it was still a fine building, and it was a pity it was knocked until 1967, and you know, the amount of money spent to knock it, I'd say if they spent half of it doing a little repair on it, it would be there to stay, and it would be there for generations to come, because the castle gate is still there, and it's maybe it needs a little bit of repair now too, but at the same time, you know, it's just good to have it.
Well, my dad bought the place in 1932, and he rebuilt it in 1933, I think. He got married then, and my mother opened the shop here. My mother died in 2006, my father died in 1982, so I took off from them. But everything is changing. There was 2 mill water factories, 1 timber mill, there was 5 pubs here. There were 2 forges at the end of the street there, just across the road by the bridge. They were always showing horses. About a dozen shops like this. Several people here had cows, they had their own cows. They were milking their own cows and selling the milk from the door or from the shops. People going to Mass on Sundays, the farming community, a lot of them would have a horse and trap. That was the style that time, because they had no motor cars. There was a town fair every month. First month would be in the town square over that time. The second month then it would be around the Fairfield and Masseytown. But they were all working together, like, you know, both places worked together. The mart came in, well, my father was involved in bringing that in. And that came in, it was first a sales yard, but they found out that the sales yard wasn't working, and they came in and they converted to a mart, which was quite simple. That was 1962, the sales yard started. And it is there since, which is a huge industry today in town. But everything is changing every day. massive traffic in town.
We could do with a bypass very badly because the town is gridlocked. So I'm very much in favour of the bypass.
Now the engineers came and the planners to do a survey of the wood, to map out the road as expected and plan it as best as they could. But their presence it soon was detected by those slugs with their razor-sharp ears. In thousands they soon congregated and surrounded the poor engineers. Now these slugs could slug porter like camels, and soon were a regular sight, slugging black stuff by the gallon and sluggishly looking for fight. They'd arrive in the mills without warning, drink Beamish and Guinness and Coors, and they'd slide away home in the morning, a right shower of slippery whores.